Bro, these visuals, man, they're just so good. Like, seriously, let's just take a look at this. Like, the ending song visuals for Oshi no Ko episode 2 is just beautiful. Like, honestly, from what I'm being told, apparently Queen Bee has worked on this, by the way, like the visuals for the ending and opening. I don't know if that's true. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if that is indeed the case, that is just like a huh? Because I'm not going to elaborate, but if you know who Queen Bee is as an animation company, let's just say they make some pretty sloppy animation sometimes. People meme on them, so to speak. So the fact that we have visuals that are as beautiful as this, especially for Oshi no Ko, and that is legit, like, if it's true, and I'm not being lied to, it's pretty impressive. But regardless, whoever actually worked on these visuals for the opening and ending song, just straight up, they did some good stuff. Like, seriously, I want to show you some of the opening visuals. Like, here's some visuals literally from the opening, like some standout shots. Like, I love the eye designs. Like, I want to show more of this in a second with the episode, but, like, I really want to point out the eye design of the characters, that they're really wanting to put this front and center while you're watching the show. Because even though this is obviously the opening song, and some of the visuals already show was from the ending song, even throughout the episode, like, you know, if you're actually just, like, watching the episode and all that, and you're going through the episode looking at the character eye designs when we actually have a close-up shot, they do really good with just eyes, the way they draw the eyes, etc. And I think that legit is, like, one of the most outstanding parts. Like, look at this, like, now, I know this seems very small in detail when you take a look at it, but you gotta imagine, drawing these frames for these characters and putting, like, the eye design for, like, Aqua and Ruby would take a lot of work. There's a lot of, like, effort put into that to be able to draw these eyes, and they do a lot of emphasis on the eye designs while you're just watching the episode. And so it's like, it's not just, like, the visual department. Like, this scene right here, like, look at this beautiful scene. Like, I know it's sad, and I'll talk all about this in a second, but, like, when you look at these, like, visuals of the characters and all that, and, like, for instance, how Ruby's eyes, how they tear up, you see how, you know, like, there's darkness a little bit in her eyes, but they're still a little bit bright in there. It's just, I love the way they're using eyes within this show. It's easily one of the most outstanding aspects of just the anime. And it's what I talked about in my videos I've already made of Oshi no Ko, is that if there is one thing that, you know, was in the manga that has really been brought to life within the anime, is how the eyes were just so front and center. Because, like, if you've read the manga, and don't worry, you don't need to read the manga. I truly will say this right now. As a manga reader, stick to the anime. The anime is just great. I see no business with any anime only right now reading the manga. Like, the anime is just doing an excellent job, and it's not disappointing. It's following the content. I would not worry whatsoever, at least at this point in time. So, don't read the manga. But, hypothetically, if you have seen panels of it, the characters' eyes in the manga, they have, you know, a lot of focus put on them. But the fact that we get to see them colored and movement and all that, it's just, oh, I love it, man. I can't get enough of it. But okay, enough with that. Let's actually dive into this episode. So one thing I want to point out, which is still technically kind of in a similar topic, is the opening and ending song. We get the opening song, which is very cheerful, and this is the song we heard at the end of the first episode, when the credits started to roll, and everybody was jumping for joy. And then I also showed that little, you know, scene, the new animation sequence for the opening song, that's actually completely different, by the way. If you remember, I showed at the end of my first impressions of Oshi no Ko, there was a video that was uploaded on YouTube for this song, this actual song, and it has completely different visuals. And those visuals are actually not for this opening song. And I was just like, whoa, so they really did go out of their way in making a completely separate, like, opening sequence, especially for YouTube. I was just like, that's kind of wild, but anyways, the point is that the opening song for Oshi no Ko is very cheerful, vibrant, and it's kind of like a love song that is, you know, Ai talking to her children, talking to her stalker, talking about her life as an idol, all these different things. There obviously is some darker tones within the song, but overall, when you just get the impression of the song, it's a very cheerful, upbeat, lively song. That is literally the impression you get when you watch the opening, despite obviously some darker themes. So when you go into the ending song is more depressing. The colors are more toned down. The only thing that legitimately, like, really stands out when, like, you're watching this in terms of the colors, like, because a lot of the colors are muted, is the eyes, as you can see, or the eyes really pop, which is what I talked about. And so I think that the way the contrast is between the opening and ending song perfectly represents everybody's impression of Oshinoko episode 1. I think that's stunning, because, like, think about this. Anyone that went into Oshinoko blind, like the first episode, you weren't spoiled, because I know there's countless people that were spoiling that literal image. Like, I remember looking through my YouTube even yesterday, and I saw, like, reactors and a bunch of people just putting Oshinoko's final scene with Eyes Deaf as their thumbnail, and I'm like, wow. I was like, okay. But, anyways, the point is that, if you went into Oshinoko, like, with no expectations, completely blind, you'd probably just say it's an idol show. And it's wholesome. That's what your impression would be. So when you see the opening visuals, it basically lets us see, like, this happy, upbeat, wholesome experience that hints at maybe things to come, which is technically how Oshinoko started, because it did start with, the doctor being murdered, but it did have a lot of upbeat and life poured into it. That was very wholesome, when, seeing the children with Ai. So when you get to the ending song, it kind of just reveals the truth. Like, the mask is off and what the series really is. You get to see, like, for instance, Aqua being dragged into the abyss. He's surrounded by an ocean and water. The strings of, like, a puppet master pulling him down, so to speak. And he's desperately wanting to get out of it as he reaches his arm up. And then you see Ruby as well. She's by herself and all that, looking down. You can assume she's at the grave site of her mother, and you could just see by the overall expression thanks to the snow, she's very lonely as well, but she isn't in complete depression as, let's say, Aqua is. So there is a lot of little tones and ways that this ending song provides, where you get to see just a lot of the story that these two characters are dealing with the passing of their mother in very different ways. And I think that the episode in general does this in a very good way as well, and I'm about to talk about that. But, yeah, I like the tones. They really mesh completely well with your expectations of Oshinoko. So, okay, so the overall story taking place within episode 2 is obviously set 10 plus years after Ai's death. Obviously. I mean, we saw the time skip at the end of the first episode. But we get to see kind of what Aqua and Ruby have kind of been up to, what they've been doing since the passing, and how they either have moved on or not moved on since then. And it's pretty clear what's going on within this episode. That Ruby is more bubbly. She's trying to live her life to the fullest. She's trying to follow in her mother's footsteps, Ai's footsteps. She wants to be an idol. And when you take a look at just some of the images that are drawn of her within this episode, she does look pretty much identical to Ai, to the way she expresses herself, to the movements, everything about it. It's very clear that it's supposed to be like that. You're supposed to feel that Ruby literally looks like Ai when we saw her in the first episode. And she's trying to do her own thing in her own way and trying to become an idol. She wants to be an idol. She wants to have that dream. She wants to be able to just live that life. Because obviously in her previous life, she was someone that died. And she didn't want to have a life like that to where she wasn't able to accomplish anything. So she wanted to do something. So basically most of this episode is Ruby trying to figure out how she can become an idol. While Aqua takes more of a front and center, well, a backseat role, but front and center for this episode, and I think that actually is nice. I think that's obviously intentional from a writing department. Let's actually get into that first. So, basically, we see in this episode that Aqua tries many times to sabotage Ruby and becoming an idol. Like, just straight up trying to sabotage her. And even though he's trying to sabotage her, he's not doing it because he's angry with her, or he's malicious, or whatever. He's doing it because he wants to protect Ruby. He wants to protect her from the life of an idol because, as we saw within the first episode, the whole concept of the first episode was showcasing the toxicity of the idol industry, of just how when you become an idol, a lot of negatives outweigh the positives, to the fact that your privacy is completely gone, to the fact that if you were to get a boyfriend or husband, girlfriend, whatever, theoretically your career is over. You have stalkers that will come after you and literally try to kill you or will kill you, to just overall maybe a father figure doing something crusty behind the scenes and potentially, planning your death. There's a lot of things going on that, was showcased in the first episode. The toxicity of everything. And obviously, Aqua isn't someone that is naive. He has gotten to see it, and obviously, it's sad. He has to face that reality, and he's someone that is focusing hard on the negatives, that there's just so many negatives, it just outweighs any positives that you theoretically could have of being an idol. So he wants to protect Ruby from that. He doesn't want Ruby going down the path of idol where she has to put on a facade, have a mask, so to speak, have, this expectations that it's going to be bubbly and happy, but in reality it's not. He wants to protect her. So everything he's doing does come from a good place. But obviously, it's still not his decision to make because at the end of the day, Ruby is her own person. So let's get into what I was trying to talk about. So basically, he's doing this behind the scenes. Aqua is constantly trying to sabotage Ruby throughout this episode, and eventually he has to buckle because, there's alternative means that's made to where she, Ruby gets with Strawberry Productions, aka, her foster mother. And so he no longer could kind of stop the wheels that have been put into motion because she will 100% become an idol. And we get a little bit of details with him basically saying he wants to be more of a background role. Like, he talks about his objective, aka the revenge story. That, he realized at first maybe he wanted to be an actor. Maybe he wanted this background role to be an assistant director, or like he wanted to be an actor, but then he became a director/assistant director. He'd rather be that. Because if he does that, he's able to still be in the entertainment industry, but he's more of a background role. He's not front and center, so to speak, and he would be completely fine with that. And so he says he'd rather be in the shadows, so to speak. And obviously, a lot of the way the art is depicted throughout this episode to the ending and opening song visuals, this definitely represents that. He wants to be in the shadows, the darkness, so to speak, of, the entertainment industry. While what's funny and ironic about this is that even though that is what he wants, clearly that is not what's actually happening. Once again, he's front and center, constantly trying to sabotage Ruby. And I think that is interesting from a storytelling perspective, that he is always out in the open, trying whatever he can to protect Ruby. I think that's cool. I don't know. Once again, I don't know if this was completely intentional, but that's definitely the impression you get while watching the episode. Now, besides that, obviously, we get a nice little moments here and there throughout the episode, getting to see how people have accepted the passing of Ai, to Ruby obviously feeling hurt by it, but she's trying to still remain happy and have a good life, while we see Strawberry Productions, which, we saw her in the first episode, she was going to kind of spill the beans on Ai. She's become more of a mature person, she's taken control of the operations of this, company, and she's trying to really raise these kids right. It's very clear just by the way the demeanor of some of these characters are, the passing of Ai has really affected a lot of people, even people that were not as closely affiliated with her, like the director, so to speak, was obviously affected. So I think that this episode does a good job of kind of like a little bit of an epilogue, showcasing just the aftermath of everything, and kind of what to expect going forward. So legit, this is a good episode of Oshi no Ko. It gets better and better. Honestly, I know people will disagree with me, because obviously it's going to be hard to beat an hour and 22-minute first episode. That's legitimately difficult to beat. But in terms of the condensed nature, since this is obviously a regular episode now, like 20-something minutes, I think that in terms of content and what this episode tried to convey, I think it does honestly on par, maybe even better at some points than the previous episode. It's legitimately a really good episode to showcase what Oshi no Ko will be going forward. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed my content, please subscribe, leave a like on this video. It does help me out a lot. And if you like my Oshi no Ko videos, leaving a like will allow more of my Oshi no Ko videos to appear in your feed. But with that, be safe, stay healthy, Chibi out.